like failure, embracing failure. Like what we showed you is like the highlights.
Yep.
Like I've been fired from work before. Like there's plenty of failure. Like there's nothing embarrassing or bad about failure. And like really the only time you fail, or like you only learn when you fail.
Mm-hmm.
If you succeed, you didn't actually learn what doesn't work. You just succeeded. Like that's kind of hollow. So we love to fail. Our favorite expression is fail fast, fail cheap, and something else.
Our expression, and you don't know it?
Yeah. But yeah, no, we yeah. So failure is like really, really important for us. It's
I think when you get us in a room together, it's a little dangerous because we're like, one of us is like, oh, that's a bad idea. And the other guy's like, nah, just think about it. It's, you know, it's kind of like we could make it work. Like it's a little bit of this and a little of that. And then the other guy's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then a bad idea turns into, let's just do it. And what's the worst that could happen, you know?
our catchphrase on the left. You know, it says winning things that don't matter. Basically the projects no one else wants to do or is interested in, we win those. So you know, we're very competitive against nobody. And that's kind of the way we like it. We like to operate in what we call like a non-compete space. You know, it's just really, for us, it's really fun to just do stuff that's really sort of out there, very unique. Do you want to go over bio now, or is it later?
It's how we got there.
Okay. So don't worry, we'll talk about how we got here.
So this is just going to talk about what actually Oilstainlab is, which is probably more interesting than. But yeah. So what do we do? Yeah, we're a design consultancy. So we've done a lot of stuff. We've worked on a lot of cool projects. Race cars is obviously a soft spot. I think ever since we were kids, we've loved race cars. And so been privileged to work on, you know, the Acura DPI project, which was really, really cool. It's a 2-time world championship winning car. And a personal note for me is Juan Pablo drove the car, which is pretty cool because growing up, watched him at Williams and stuff in Formula One. It's pretty sick to have him drive something you kind of worked on. And of course, Ken Block's Puna Pegasus that raced at Pikes Peak one time and blew up.
Yeah, and I think, you know, what's interesting about these is like you learn something every time, whether it's aero, whether it's engineering, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's regulations. And you know, they're really, really challenging projects despite how crazy and advanced they look. I know on the Acura, for example, like you basically couldn't do much. So yeah, it's kind of the challenge of it, right?
We could touch the front end.
Yeah.
I couldn't fix that rear fender. That rear fender I couldn't touch. I hate that rear fender. But.
Yeah, so does everyone. Yeah, concept cars. We've done a bunch of those. Obviously worked on a bunch. Obviously it's always a team effort. So even though it's here, there's plenty of people involved, plenty of management, etc. So can't take credit for all of it. But yeah, this is outside of Oilstainlab. This is kind of more of our experience, I guess.
Yeah. Done production cars, CRV, the RDX. I think there's like over 6 million of these things on the road. Yeah, these things have obviously educated us as well a ton, just from kind of production processes, manufacturing, all sorts of stuff, you know, from warranty issues. You just learn how complex cars are, and also having access to those kind of resources, you know, billion-dollar car programs is just so insane and such a privilege. So yeah, it's a great way to learn.
Yeah, and just to top that off, I think, you know, I mean, when I was a young designer, I was always like thinking, oh, you know, like Honda, they're just, you know, they design ugly cars. That must mean because they don't have good designers. When you go through the production process and you kind of learn why things are the way they are and budgets and everything. Yeah, it really opens your eyes, and you gain a lot of respect, I think, for people that have been able to push through a production car. Just to do that is its own challenge, and obviously if it's decent looking, then it's even more of a feather in your hat. So massive respect for people that do this.
Yeah, just more sports cars again. Race cars, sports cars, that's the thing. Kind of love it. Whether it's electric, combustion engine, whatever. It's yeah, we love it. We've done tons of products. One of the first ones we did was headphones, actually, for JBL. But I think product design is fascinating, and it's outside the scope of what traditional automotive is. So it's just fun. It's a fun playground. Seating, keys, whatever. It's all good.
Yeah, you get to play with, the idea in car design is always like, oh, come up with a fresh body side. But when you don't have a body side, what can you do, and what kind of form factor can you explore? And again, it gets into cost and manufacturing and all the different techniques that different industries use. So yeah, super fun to explore. These are just some liveries, so graphic design. We love doing that stuff. Some of these are for Red Bull, and other ones are for Pikes Peak. Obviously there's a customer, so you can't exactly do what you want always. Definitely those Audran race cars on the right were very frustrating because a very conservative client. But still you're always learning stuff about shape and graphics and how to apply it. So yeah, it's even to the way like the stickers are put on the car. It's kind of fascinating, really interesting how they line everything up.
Yeah, electric. So we've worked with companies that have designed kind of electric battery motors, in this case kind of like a Restomati thing. We're always kind of on the lookout for other brands, companies that need a little bit of a love. Maybe they have a really fantastic product, but design is on the weak side, so yeah, a lot of kind of networking and finding clients as well is obviously part of design consultancy game. Vintage cars. This is this is our day-to-day life. It's kind of where we live. We enjoy modern design, we enjoy all of that, but like there's just nothing cooler than old cars ripping up in California. So this is our life. Yeah.
So yeah, the Marlboro started the addiction. It's a car we'll never get rid of. And then obviously the collection's grown. And yeah, we still occasionally build some of these for clients. We're building an old Mercedes right now for a client outside of the US. So yeah, it's fun. It's very different than corporate design life for the big OEMs, let's say that. We do a lot of off-road stuff as well, so safari builds, Range Rovers. Some of you may have seen the Scarbo Defender. It just ran the Nora 1000, so race in Mexico, 1,000 miles through the desert. I was also at Ice Race. Joe's a good friend of ours, a really talented engineer. So we help him out with design. He helps us with engineering. It's a really sort of solid partnership. And then we do a lot of also branding and stuff. So if you've seen maybe the Drive Coffee stuff, we've done a lot of their artwork, their packaging, their branding. And for us, it's just an opportunity to like storytelling. How do you make coffee, very premium, for example? That's kind of the challenge there, something that's considered a throwaway. We've also done our own coffee. We've done our own beer. We have our own wine. So those are our things that matter to us, and so we've invested some time into that. And then we do some stuff with two wheels, whether it's Super 73 and other brands. We just kind of like exploring form factors and everything. And then of course Half 11. That's probably what we're notorious for currently. But yeah, we'll get into that whole project
later on. Yeah, next slide. So yeah, this is basically kind of a quick overview of what we do, what we've done, maybe, and kind of, yeah. I guess, yeah, this starting next slide. Yeah, how it all began, right? So me and my brother were born in Ukraine, in Kherson, which is of course a battlefield right now, which is very, very crazy to think about. But yeah, we were basically, it was the USSR at the time, so Ukraine didn't exist, Russia didn't really exist. But yeah, we were born in '88, so it makes us 36 years old. Yeah, and we, as a family, basically political asylum, essentially escaped from the USSR, got to Turkey, I think when we were like maybe 1.5, 2 years old, something like that. And then we lived in Turkey for, gosh, must be like a year and a half, maybe, something like that.
Yep.
I have very, very vague memories of it. Just some cool toys my parents bought me. This really big dump truck. And then we ended up going to Canada. And so, yeah, our parents basically landed in Canada with no money, politically kind of escaping a regime, so to speak. And then, yeah, 2 kids. And yeah, next. So the early years, we grew up in a place called Halifax, which is East Coast Canada. It's quite a small city. I think it's maybe like 300,000 people now. But at the time, it was smaller. Essentially, it's famous for the world's biggest non-nuclear explosion. It's like 2 giant boats crashed into each other, with one, I think, was carrying like TNT, and the other one was like some chemicals, just basically flatten the city. And then, yeah, we just did Canadian things. We were just, yeah, playing hockey, being outdoors, kind of starting to get into cars. I think around what, it was like 6,
Later than that.
7, 8.
I mean, we're always drawing spaceships and dinosaurs and cars. That was always a big sort of passion for us. But yeah, at some point, I think it was much later. I think it was around 10 when we like really got into cars, learned everything about cars. My dad was buying a new car, and so we helped him buy it. Let's call it that. I don't think he'd agree with that, but we were. Yeah, we were very influential as 10-year-olds. But yeah, that's when we sort of started looking at cars seriously. But there's no car culture in Halifax. You know, I remember getting excited if I saw a BMW or an Audi, you know, just like an A4 or 3 Series. Like, it was so exciting. I think there were like 3 or 4 Porsches in the entire city, the entire sort of province. So definitely we're not exposed to what we have now here in California, where we're super, super lucky. We did travel a lot as kids, so we did go to Europe. Our grandparents were in the UK, so we did visit the McLaren dealership there. We saw the McLaren F1. And then I think my first real memory was in Spain, where I saw Lamborghini Diablo and told my parents, like, hey, let's stop. We got to go to this dealership. And they let us sit in it. So Diablo remains a very favorite car for both me and him.
I don't remember.
It happened. It happened.
Sure.
It happened. You like the Diablo, though, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. This is the origin story of your love for the Diablo. Okay.
Definitely not.
Just accept it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think England instrumental, right? Grandparents lived there.
You remember the McLaren F1, though?
Yes, of course.
Okay.
And then, yeah, our parents, like our mom's a naval architect, so she worked as an engineer for GM for, gosh, a few years, and stuff like that. So we went into work one day, and like into her work, and she showed us like their computers, and they're like, like AutoCADing like some stuff, and it was all technical and super cool. Didn't understand any of it, but also didn't understand how much of the future would rely on that. But yeah, I guess that was another kind of influence.
Yeah, and I think most people, like when they're kids, right? I think most creatives have struggled with their parents saying, "Hey, you can't make a living doing this." So that I don't think our childhood was any different. I think our parents wanted us to be lawyers or doctors, did everything in their power to steer us clear of being car designers. But yeah, we were just we were obsessed with becoming car designers. And so at what would you say, like 12, 13? That's when we like fully committed to it. 12. So fully committed at 12 to trying to be car designers, learned about car design on Car Design News. And I think there was what was that website where you could put your portfolio?
Designer Space.
Designer Space. Yeah. Probably no one remembers that, but
That's for sure.
Designer Space was epic. Yeah, very embarrassing now looking back at it. But yeah, so I think Iliya won a design competition or something when he was like 13, Motor Trend. Yeah, very proud moment. And yeah, we basically decided, yeah, we want to be car designers. Let's do everything in our power. So we're drawing all the time. And at the same time, basically trying to get out of high school. And so, yeah, dropped out of high school at 14 and moved to Italy. Got accepted to a university there, IED, European to Design. Coventry also accepted us, but when they found out how old we were, they said, no, you can't come here at 14. So we were stuck. We had to go to Italy. We learned Italian.
Nice.
Is that education?
Yeah.
Okay. And so yeah, there on the map you can see where Halifax, Nova Scotia is. So we first went east to Europe, did almost 2 years in Italy, lived in Torino, studied in Italian. What a challenge that was. Looking back at it, it's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then basically decided it's not for us. We had a very instrumental meeting, I guess, with Frank Stevenson, who at the time was, I believe, either Mini or Ferrari. And he basically told us, like, you guys need to go to Art Center. Like, it's the best school in the world. You got to go to Art Center. And of course, Art Center is incredibly expensive, stupidly expensive. So by this time, our parents, who obviously are supporting us through all this, are like, okay, well, they seem like they're committed. Like, we're not going to be able to convince them to be doctors or lawyers. Like, all right, let's try and find a way to pay for this crazy expensive school. Yeah, so we applied, we got accepted, and we started Art Center at 17 years old, right?
Awesome.
And then, yeah, that's is that Iliya graduating, Stuart Reed?
Probably, yeah.
That's some grad show stuff, and then that's my Bugatti senior thesis.
I mean, the thing to explain about Art Center is when we got there, we're 17. The average age at Art Center at the time was probably like 27. A lot of people had previous degrees, whether it was, either art degrees or engineering degrees, whatever, right? But they were much more mature, much more complete human beings than what we were. We were very, I'd say, pretty sheltered. It was definitely like a culture shock moving to California. Felt somewhat comfortable in Europe, but California is just another animal completely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously me and him kind of did everything together, right? And we kind of continued that. So I wouldn't say we were like the most social or anything. We were just kind of like the weird nerds and the young nerds in the corner, kind of did our work, and that was it. And I'd say probably until like maybe fourth, fifth term that we began to kind of come out of our shell a little bit. And like, that's when we had like, first Korean barbecue and like sushi and stuff. Because again, yeah, very, very sheltered growing up. So yeah, learn how to, do things like chopsticks in California. So yeah, it was fascinating. It was a crazy time, a lot of growth, a lot of like new experiences, and yeah, it was also like really the first time we were on our own, so to speak, as well, like outside away from our parents and everything. So yeah, it was cool time. Yeah, so after that, basically graduate, I think in 2012, something like that. And then yeah, it was time to get jobs. And again, me and my brother always, hang out together, always together. So we're like, well, let's get jobs together. So during interviews and everything, we basically told all the companies like we want to work together. There's a few that definitely laughed at us and we're just like, yeah, okay, good luck. And then there was several that wanted to hire both of us. But I think the funniest one was GM, right? That was pretty, because my brother basically interviewed there first, and then they gave him an offer, and then he went back and he was like, yeah, but like, you guys like want to hire my brother? Like, I want to work with him. And GM then interviewed me, and then they gave me a higher salary and a higher offer than him. And I was just like, wait, what?
Not cool.
Not cool. Super, super funny. But we ended up going to Toyota, just because Calty at the time was, and still is, like a little bit of like its own little island. It's a bit of a mystery studio, so to speak, in terms of kind of, yeah, what really happens there. I had interned at Honda. You had interned at Volkswagen, DCC or whatever. And we knew other studios quite well from other friends or whatever. So ended up going to Toyota.
So Mike Kim was there.
Yeah, Mike Kim was there. That's right. Yeah. And then we spent 1 year there? Yep, 1 year. We were contractors for 1 year. And then basically Dave Merrick at Honda came calling a year basically after, and he basically poached us. So we both went to the AD studio at Honda, and then spent 3 years together there essentially. And that's I started my production car projects at that time, and so I kind of stayed. Plus, it was they were doing my green card as well, so I had numerous reasons to stay. And you kind of took off, and
yeah, and that's where Oilstainlab was born in Honda when we were at the downtown LA design studio. And then yeah, so Iliya stayed and did the production cars, and then from Honda I went to Hyundai and Genesis. So I ended up going there. This was before they were kind of launching the new Genesis, so worked on a few projects there, but it wasn't a fit at all for me, let's say. Yeah, it was too it was very difficult because you basically had an American boss and then a Korean boss, and then I found myself in a spot where it was weird. Like they wouldn't even let me print an 11x17. Oh, what happened? What happened there?
says you're presenting, everybody.
There. Are we back? You can see that?
Yep.
Okay. It kicked us out of the PDF. Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, so yeah, we're basically at Hyundai. Didn't really like it there. So ended up basically quitting after I think 5 months. After 5 months, I quit. And there was one statement that basically broke that relationship, or broke me staying at that studio, and it was John Kristesky. Basically, I asked him how I was doing, and then he told me, "Can you be like everybody else?" And as soon as I heard, "Can you be like everybody else?" I knew that I couldn't stay there. Like that wasn't what I was gonna be or do or anything. So
What
yeah.
did he mean by that? Like, what did he mean by saying, "Can you be with like anyone else?"
Yeah, I mean that's a common refrain, I guess, in my career, because that later happened at GM as well. But I think, I'm a person that maybe doesn't do so well in very structured environments or where things are very kind of expected. Always trying to basically push the limits, break the rules, find new solutions, and kind of surprise people, even if it's a little bit offensive. I thought my stuff at Hyundai was extremely conservative. Obviously, John did not agree with that. He thought maybe I was pushing the limits too far or whatever. So, yeah. After that, basically, after he said, "Can you be like all the other designers?" I was just like, "Well, you have all these other designers. Like, you can work with them." Like, I quit. Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because they see your portfolio, they hire the portfolio, and then for some reason they don't like what's in the portfolio. And generally, I have been hired to scare people or to provoke people, kind of. I'm usually not hired to like make a beautiful GT car or something. Or at least at that point in my career, it was always to like push the limits. So yeah, it was an interesting sort of turn of events. So I ended up quitting, and then yeah, headed over to GM Advanced Design, where me and Art met finally in person. But yeah, we worked there together, and then yeah, sort of a very similar frame there, GM Advanced for about 2 years. Was told to be more normal, and then yeah, did some projects there, show cars, etc. And then after 4 years there, I was basically fired. So yeah, I think that's really important for everybody. Actually, I think everybody should be fired. This is advice for all young designers. Definitely follow this portion of advice. But yeah, no, I do think it's really important to, yeah, kind of be fired at least once from a job, not because like you're being disrespectful or anything, but just because it isn't a fit or
Like a reality check.
Exactly. And I think what that does is, well, for me, what that did was really separate, we always evaluate how good a designer we are on whether we win projects, don't win projects, and like how successful we are in our career, right? And if you're able, when I got fired, I finally realized, like, you know what, it doesn't really matter how good or how bad you are, how many projects you win, how many projects you don't win, how many hours you work. It doesn't matter. Like, you can still get fired. And so for me, it was very liberating, in a really positive way, that like just breaking that mental barrier of like self-worth and success and everything that's sort of connected with that. Hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, this is awesome because usually if someone gets fired like that, they would like start questioning their career choice. Like, did I do it right? Or like, where did I go wrong? But then you took it as like a positive thing. Like, okay, I can do something better. So
Yeah, I mean, the situation at GM was very awkward, but yeah, I mean, I definitely questioned myself as well, and I think I've learned from it and learned better ways to handle situations, let's call it that. But also it was very like super positive for me in terms of like on the mental side of like separating work from self-worth and all that stuff. But yeah, then after GM basically joined you at GAC, right?
Yeah, after Honda gave me my green card and done some projects or whatever. Yeah, I think it was probably like a month or two after I got my green card, I quit. They weren't very happy with that either. But yeah, I joined GAC in Newport Beach. It was at the time a relatively new studio. Pontus is of course running it. Stayed there for 3 years, something like that. We did a bunch of stuff, bunch of concept cars, worked on the sports car that eventually went into production. Very intense work environment. They get results. But yeah, essentially during the later stages there, it went into COVID. COVID happened. That's when you joined, and working from home, and it just, I think the studio environment deteriorated there under Pontus, under work from home conditions, and so it was, a chance call from a good friend that got me over to Canoe. He actually called my brother to hire my brother.
Everyone's trying to hire me. Everyone's always trying to hire me.
And then my brother's just like, yeah, he might want to hire my brother. So yeah, Jack was the guy, and he got me over to Canoe, and I was a happy boy to join that company. Crazy talent. And then I got to work with Art, so that's my turn. So yeah. And then I'm still there essentially, still doing that, and then you're basically full-time Oilstain.
Yeah, I mean, after GAC, I basically started working with a bunch of clients on the freelance side. So it went everything from sports cars to electrical infrastructure to branding to TV shows for Netflix, all sorts of stuff. So it was very exciting. You never knew what would happen every week. There were busy times, there were lean times. Again, it's probably easier for a more experienced designer to handle that after everything I'd been through. So it can be stressful, but also super rewarding and super sort of fun.
And so with all that said, corporate life is corporate life, right? There's processes, there's people, personalities, all sorts of stuff, right? So there's fantastic days, there's days where you have amazing resources, you're working on amazing projects, and then there's days that are more difficult, and what we do is we escape with cars. And then I think my brother talked earlier a little bit about the Marlboro. We bought this car when we were 25 years old. We had just paid off our student loans, we were debt free, and we literally took every single dollar we had and we bought this car. We didn't have money to pay rent the next month, but we knew the paycheck was good for it, right? Honda was definitely going to send us a paycheck, so we're good. This car, we still have it to this day. We've done everything with it: track days, photo shoots, road trips. It's been through thousands and thousands of miles of California, trips, and
three engines,
blown a bunch of engines. It's lived a rough life, but a very, very full life. So this is definitely our baby. And then I think another car we're somewhat famous for is this one, the Safari GTV. So this was the second car we got. Another point to make actually is when we bought the Marlboro car, we'd never driven an old 911, and we didn't know how to drive like a manual gearbox car. We never knew how to do an oil change. Again, we grew up pretty sheltered. Our parents thought working on cars was a disgusting job and you shouldn't do it. You should just let mechanics do it. So our knowledge of systems on cars, honestly, we couldn't do an oil change. The first time we tried to do an oil change, we spilled all the oil everywhere. It was a total disaster. So
game Oilstain.
and so Yeah, it's been this journey of with older cars, they're a little bit more simple, less electronics. It's been able to learn all these systems and how to work with them, modify them, stuff like that. So this was a good example with kind of off-road and stuff like that. And then this car, the graffiti RSR, is the first car we ever took down to bare metal. So we took every single nut and bolt off this car and completely rebuilt it from scratch. Primered it in our garage. It took like 4 years, I think, to build it up, but it was really instrumental in being like, oh, okay, this is how every single piece goes together. Like, this isn't that complicated. So as each one of these projects kind of got more and more involved, what do you do after that, right? After you take a car and you rebuild it from scratch, well, you build a car from scratch, and that's where Half 11 project kind of starts. And essentially one day a long time ago, we got this car on the left, which is a 912 tub, 911 tub, essentially. And then it's basically like someone had butchered it. They cut the roof off of it, so it wasn't actually a cabrio. It was like someone just messed it up. So it was all sorts of like junkyardy. And then we brought that to the house and parked it in our backyard. No idea what we were gonna do with it, but it was just too good of an opportunity to pass up. So we brought it home, and then over, I think, a couple years, it took us a long time to figure out what to do. We'd played around with 911s. We built wide ones, more narrow ones, whatever, right? But in the end, we were just having beers one day in the back of our in our backyard, in our beer garden, so to speak, and came up with this idea that what if the 911, from a marketing perspective, in the late 1960s, the marketing department wanted to make it the Halo kind of prototype racer. And so you had the 917, but the 917 is its own animal. It's not really relevant to like what they were selling. So the marketing team says, yo, can we make like a 911 that's like a 917 and take that sports car racing instead? And we loved that idea. And then we just basically started running with that, and kind of starting to build a story about that, obviously inspired by history and kind of all the stuff that happened. Yeah, so I think fundamentally, I guess we're kind of famous for these fake history renderings at this point. And the reason we did initially create them is, as a car designer, you're always working in the future. You're always working 10 to 20 years in the future. You're trying to predict trends. You're trying to predict technologies. You're trying to create justification for why your car is so advanced or why it looks this way or whatever. There's a very good logic for that, right? You basically create a world and you live that world, and you say that's the world that'll be in the future. But we wanted to do that for the past. And so these renderings really served a purpose of like checking, does the car look like it belongs in that time period, right? So yes, it was also really funny to post it on Instagram and have everybody be really confused about whether this car existed or not. But we didn't even like try that hard to make it super realistic. Like, we didn't spend that much time. I mean, honestly, a lot of these renderings were like 5 minutes, throw it in red and like Photoshop it a little. And they were really just tests for us. Like, what we're building, does it fit into that environment? Does it look like it has the same level of technology and everything? And of course, there's a more multifaceted approach to it. This was probably 2019-ish, 2020. So there's this whole like fake news thing. There's the whole Donald Trump thing where you just make up your own truth and all this stuff. Yeah, so we're also playing with that. Obviously on social media, everybody's just scrolling. So, what does it take to get someone to stop?
What does it take for someone to like stop scrolling, look at something and be like, wait, is that real? Is it not real? So there were a number of other sort of facets to it. Another one was we didn't want to tell a story. Like for us, everything's story. All our projects are about story. And we learned that from a book we read when we were young, probably like 12 to 14 somewhere. It's called American Car Design Now. And I believe Jay Mays is the primary author. Jay Mays used to be the chief designer at Ford and worked at Audi along with Freeman Thomas and kind of this golden generation of designers for us. So super influential. Whatever they say, we listen. And so he always equated, cars and storytelling and said it was super important and always equated it to movies. And so when we started this project, we wanted it to be, I mean, obviously we're not making a movie, but we are telling a story, and we wanted to have people that appreciate good movies appreciate the car story, you know? And so we tried to reach people that aren't car people, but just people that like history, people that like motorsport, people that like, fake history or science fiction, stuff like that. So you broaden your base of appeal. And the more people you can appeal to, obviously, the more important it is for a project to succeed, gain traction, go viral, etc. So there's a lot of thought behind it. But it all is very like, I don't know, maybe on a subconscious level. It's not like we really talk about these things. They sort of happen. We think about them. But also it's a lot of fun to do this stuff, because obviously in a corporate environment you can't do this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is it was this visual business card, right? For the brand. We had just started a brand. This was like a fun thing we wanted to do. We had no idea on the scope of this project. Honestly, we planned on just kind of building something in our garage at our house. Pretty low key, pretty simple, nothing complicated. But then some of the stuff went online and there was a lot of interest, and then the project has continued to grow ever since, which is kind of shocking when you think back to it. Yeah, so early days. Again, some of it's sketching as well. We did doodles and stuff like that, but we also had a pretty clear direction. And it was more of like, how do we actually like make these parts, you know? Like, how do you make a roll cage structure that ties in an engine and gearbox and suspension points? And like, there's obviously a lot of science that goes into this, right? And so a lot of the early days was dicking around in kind of CAD modeling and learning new software. And you know, the chassis there is a stress analysis that we were running by ourselves at our house with no engineering, just learning, you know, basically just learning. It was horrible at the start. And then as we educated ourselves and put good practices in, our engineering skills got better and better and better. And then when we went to talk to some more, you know, like Joe Scarbo, the guy that ended up building the rear cage for us, we knew enough that we weren't complete idiots, basically. Maybe enough to be dangerous, but yeah. Essentially, it was, this project is really about learning new skills and how you actually fabricate stuff, make things that are real, functional, and less so about like pure aesthetical design, so to speak.
I think that's also like a period correct thing, right?
So fabrication. The early days were very interesting, right? I should have put the photos where we actually cut the tub in half. But what the story there is, we were at, my parents have a place in Palm Springs, and inside their garage was the chassis And then one day we were swimming in the pool, and then it was really hot, and we were just drinking beer. And then we're like, it'd be a good idea. Let's just go cut the car in half. And so we got a Sawzall and drunkenly went into the garage and cut the car in half. And then we showed it to our friends, and we were really proud. We're like, there, it's a half 11. And that's basically where the name started for it, essentially. But we had no idea what to do next. To be honest, we were clueless. We started, getting some parts like wheels and tires together that are kind of the right size, and a lot of it was like early packaging, getting seats and trying to figure out the seating position, where the engine needs to be. It's just really basic packaging, and then basic structure essentially. And it was fun. It was like we were learning every day, just like how difficult it is.
Yeah, I think to let people know, it's like we didn't grow up building cars. Like he said, we basically did an first oil change at 25. We had no idea how to weld, how to cut the metal, shape metal, how to do anything basically. So anything we've learned, it's kind of been on this journey the last, it's been 5 years more or less from kind of this period. So in 5 years, we've sort of touched every piece of that car. We've learned how to do it. Hasn't always been easy, but it's weird how it changes you, even like the metal shaping portion of it. It changes the way you design things in the future and stuff. And so, this is some of the CAD work we were doing basically. So we scanned the tub, just kind of figuring things out, like where do the oil reservoirs go? Where's the gas tank go? Suspension, all that stuff. So this was kind of before we built the car, we had this so that we could pull sections and then, go bend the metal to match the section effectively.
Yeah. And I think this is where this was a lot more precise, in terms of the CAD work. Cause it's like, you can take all those points and really easily translate them to a cut tube that's just laser cut, and then it's just welded in position, right? So your tolerances and your accuracy is actually very, very good on stuff like this. It's when you get to the next stuff, which is like metal shaping or whatever. Well, I guess, that's fine. So this stuff. So with metal shaping, it's an art form. Again, we had no idea what we were doing. Took some really basic classes with a guy, and then eventually started to grow our skills. And kind of there's the three main processes, which is shrinking, kind of stretching, and then you can just shape it. And then when you just get frustrated, you just get a hammer and you just bang on it until it gets close. But essentially, once you get good at it, it's kind of amazing how fast you can do it. But the early days for us were very, very slow. And it was a little bit like clay modeling in metal. Because we didn't really have a buck or anything. We had our chassis. And at the time we were actively, kind of development testing, which we'll get back to. But it was like a running, driving kind of work in progress. We were developing the chassis, we're developing bodywork, everything together all at the same time. Things are always changing, moving. So the bodywork was moving a lot. Everything was ever changing. It was very fluid, very, I think only me and you knew what the hell was going on. Everyone else was just confused.
I mean, just last week we discovered, because we're working on something for Goodwood, and we just discovered that Rotiform built our front wheels 15 millimeters too wide.
Yeah.
So, we were just checking scan data versus CAD data, CNC data, and whoops.
Yeah, I don't know how that happened. Yeah. It was very, very odd. I do remember putting the tires on the first time, and they were really wide on that original bodywork, and being like, I guess we have to go wider. But development driving and kind of the mule car, so to speak. It's it's kind of crazy. The first time you obviously drive it, it's super exciting. This thing is also extremely fast. Hard to describe in words how fast it is, but it basically in this configuration, it's probably like 1850 pounds. And then it has about 650 horsepower. So power to weight is, it's right up there with some of the fastest cars out there, and for period cars like Can-Am, it's right there. And so again, me and my brother are not race car drivers. We're decent drivers, and we've played a lot of video games and done okay in those. We drive our old cars pretty hard, and we've done track days and stuff, but you get behind something like this, and it's very shocking. It's the adrenaline rush of driving it on a track the first time is pretty insane, especially because it has no bodywork. So like the wind is hitting you at literally 150 miles an hour, and it just wants to rip your head off,
And I think what's really interesting about it is, as designers, we're always sketching stuff. And then maybe they build a show car, or maybe they build a production car, right? But designers aren't really involved in sort of going to the track and doing this mule stuff, or testing it, or setting lap records or anything. And so, one of the reasons like that's so cool what we do at Oilstainlab is like you control that, and you're part of it. You organize basically these things. And so again, it's like from start to finish, it's up to you to figure it all out and to sort it out. But that's kind of the joy and the challenge of it. And you're never like, you can't be excluded, like you have to do it, right? So yeah, I remember the first time I drove this at the track, I gave my wife a big hug. I was like, I might not come back. So, and this might be the last hug here, Yeah, it's definitely like very extreme to like build something and then go and, I think initially we were basically within the first 10 laps as fast as like the new GT3 RS is. So like pretty serious speed, very quick. It's
and we broke a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like we had tons of like, when you prototype anything and you push it to limits, right? Things will break. Our exhaust system gave us a ton of issues, just because some of the design stuff on it. We had issues with engine, we had issues with some suspension geometry stuff, and
hubs.
Yeah, hubs. Brakes, pretty much everything. And you just kind of, you go out, you do some laps, you bring it in, everyone kind of like looks around the car, sees, if everything's okay. And then, it's a crazy kind of process, but it's super fun.
It's very 60s, like very like, when racing was dangerous, like it's very much like that. There's no airbags, there's no crash, there's nothing. It's just personal responsibility. It's it's high stakes, but that's what makes it like so cool, so entertaining.
All right, body work. And I mean, the coolest part I think about this whole project is like, the car's cool, this is great, but it's really like the people we've met and the places we've gone to, and kind of the memories it's built, right? So the car obviously is somewhat notorious at this point, but it gets invited to really cool events, so like we went to Hypercar, and it's like, they're running the Valkyrie, cars on track, and like you're up close with the actual like Aston Martin race mechanics, and they're setting up the AMR Pro. It's like the Marlboro and freaking McLaren F1 on a track day. Music videos. Cars kind of been our ticket, so to speak, to a lot of these events that typically like a designer wouldn't necessarily get to go and have fun at. So it's been yeah, really nice to kind of like experience those things, right? And yeah, I guess understand that, you know, if you do something that like people really, I guess, appreciate or whatever, you can you know, do a lot more with it than just kind of like showcase it.
Yeah.
That's it.
And I think, you know, when we started, a lot of people said, oh, that's crazy, or oh, that car will never be real, or it's ugly, or whatever, right? And it's like, if you believe in it, you just do it. And if you have some experience and, you know, you kind of, let's say, know what you're doing, then yeah, eventually it'll open up doors, you know. So there's a lot of like really difficult days, a lot of really long nights. But in the end, it opens so many doors for us. So yeah, super, super grateful for that car. We've had, you know, we've had a few offers, very big numbers to buy it. And I don't, again, like the Marlboro car, we'll never sell it.
Yeah. And then for, gosh, probably like 2.5 years or whatever, it was the open top car. There's a very specific reason why I was open top, because our skills in metal shaping and everything were just not very good. So there's a lot more in terms of packaging, even basic mechanics like hinges and door locks, and you know, really just primitive stuff
Really
like that.
easy to do that in CAD.
Yeah.
3D modeling, very easy.
Yeah, hinges and stuff in metal shaping is actually very difficult to do. So last, I think, summer, yeah, probably what, like August time or something, we were like, hell, we're gonna finally do the coupe, you know, we're just gonna do it. We had a giant 3D printed kind of buck, so we had checked, you know, headroom, and we were happy with it. Then we bought, you know, a plastic windshield that we had to cut like crazy to get it to fit. And then we just started, yeah, metal shaping to build the car as we always saw it, which was the coupe. And then that basically brings us, yeah, to the road trip we did last September, I think late September. And that was basically LA to New York in the half 11. I think, you know, a lot of times when we talk to people, they're always like, oh, when's the car going to be done? When's it, you know, going to be finished, whatever. I think at the time when we finished the coupe, we thought the car's done. We're like, that's it. It's done. We're going to stop, you know, messing around with it. You know, move on to other stuff. But yeah, it turns out it's not done, but just another baby step, so to speak. So this was, yeah, the final farewell for the car at the time. And so we gathered a bunch of people together, for media, photographers, whatever, a bunch of our friends, and we set out across the country to an event in New York. So we drove half 11, and then in the trailer we had the RSR graffiti car with us. So we had the two cars, and yeah, I think we ended up doing LA to New York in 4 days, something like that, 4 days. Which isn't bad, but considering what we went through, it was pretty miserable. In terms of, yeah, some of the repairs that we had to do. A lot of times people ask us, yeah, you can mention. A lot of people ask us what it was like to drive it. The car is actually pretty comfortable. Like the seating position, the seats, they're basically custom molded seats, so they're super, super comfy, even though they don't really have much padding. The car is loud, but it's not that loud. It's just you have to definitely use a raised voice to talk to your passenger. But we have like a digital rear view mirror in the car with a camera system, so visibility out of it's pretty good. Heat and air conditioning we obviously don't have, so whatever is outside you kind of get. So it gets really hot if you're going slow, but if you're moving at like freeway speeds, it's pretty comfortable as well. It has no working fuel gauge, so we basically could go 185 miles before we needed to fill up. And we got our math wrong a few times. So I think three times we ran out of gas. Yeah. And it was just such a fun experience to drive this thing through like little towns, middle of nowhere. Obviously, they rarely see cars like this, right? And so I think, you know, to experience those moments with people and interactions is, you know, such a joy, I guess. You know.
Yeah, I think so. So the biggest issue we had was we lost all four wheel bearings, right? I think that's kind of well documented at this point. I mean, other than that, the car ran great. For me, definitely the favorite moment was like driving it through New York City. This car in New York City with the loud exhaust, like everything bouncing off the buildings, like trying to look and see up at the sky. It was pretty magical. But just, yeah, trip of a lifetime. Definitely like my brother alluded, you know, when is the car finished? I think after that trip, we could honestly say like, okay, this project's finished. Like, you know, there's not much else that can be done or, you know, much else to experience. So yeah. And then there it is. So yeah, New York City. Yeah, just super cool to just see everyone's reaction to it. We didn't really have any negative interactions, even though the car's super loud. So everyone seemed to love it. Everyone seemed to just be amazed that we were driving it from LA to New York, right? But yeah, super cool.
Yeah, it's one of those experiences hard to put into words.
Yeah,
to be honest. There's one. Yeah, these are just some more shots. Yeah, we had some pretty talented photographers, so they make us look a lot cooler than we actually are.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's on the left is like an image where the whole rear end of that car is just ripped apart to replace wheel bearings. And those wheel bearings, yeah, they failed in Colorado. And yeah, we basically had to replace them along the way. They needed to be custom machined. It was just, yeah, it was a total disaster, but also a really, like, what's the quote? It's not an adventure until something goes wrong. Yeah. Words to live by. If everything goes to plan, then it's not an adventure.
It's just
Yeah.
Something bad has to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, and then after the road trip, came back and got invited to go ice race with the car. So did a new livery on it, new look, put some really skinny tires on it, and went to have fun in Colorado with a bunch of other cool cars. And then after that, we've done some more track days with the new livery as well. And yeah, it's just kind of ever evolving, the project and everything. So future plans, yeah, I mean, it's gonna go to Europe this summer. So I can go to the next one. So yeah, we just got confirmed for Goodwood. So the car will be in England July, I think 11th to 14th is when Goodwood is. So it'll probably be there for like a month. And yeah, we'll probably do some stuff in England, maybe do some other smaller events on the side while it's over there. But yeah, that's the next thing we're prepping for the next couple months. Yeah, and then that's it.
Well, this is like priceless, guys. Thanks for sharing. There's such an amazing, fearless journey, I would say. Like, like I have, before we get into the questions from the chat, I have like a very human level question for you guys.
Yeah.
Like how, like you guys have achieved something that requires way more than design knowledge and engineering knowledge and just passion for cars. It's way more than that on a daily basis. And I'm sure like a lot of students over here have this passion to make their own thing, have something that does not exist, something that's in their head, and they want to bring it to reality. But I'm sure that takes a lot of courage to do that. Like you said, when you were 25, you gave all your money to buy the 911, and then you didn't have money for the rent. So, like, how did you take your first step emotionally and on a practical level? How, like, was it the support of your brother having on your side, or like, yeah, how did you guys go ahead with that step?
Oh, that's a difficult question to answer. I think you're hitting a little bit on it for sure. It's the fact that we are together makes a huge difference. We're never alone, and I think when you get us in a room together, it's a little dangerous because we're like, one of us is like, oh, that's a bad idea, and the other guy's like, nah, just think about it. It's it's kind of like we could make it work. Like needs a little bit of this and a little of that, and then the other guy's like, yeah, I guess you're right. And then a bad idea turns into, let's just do it. And what's the worst that could happen, So I think, yeah, it's difficult, right? It's, you only live once, you only get that one chance to do what your dream is, right? And I think the one regret anyone ever has is they didn't start soon enough, right? No one's ever like, oh, I should have waited longer. They're always like, no, I should have started earlier. I should, learn faster, sooner, whatever, right? So I think between me and him, we've always had the mentality that we just enjoy challenges, I think, as well. Like, to me and him, I don't think it's about the result as much as it is just like the challenge of overcoming something, which is the fun part. And then you get to the result and say, yeah, okay, cool. But like, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
So, I think it's part personality, and definitely what we call enablers. We're each other's enabler. So I think it's just, it's a weird cocktail that kind of works.
Yeah, I mean, to add to it, I guess, when someone says something's impossible, that motivates us even more. I think that's true for a lot of creatives and stuff. But also, yeah, I mean, it's like you said, you only get one spin at life, basically, right? And it's, working in the studios and seeing like the guys that are 55 years old and they hate their job. They're only there for the paycheck. We knew that we didn't want to do that. So yeah, there's that. And then, yeah, just like failure, embracing failure. Like what we showed you is like the highlights.
Yep.
Like, I've been fired from work before. Like, there's plenty of failure. Like, there's nothing embarrassing or bad about failure. And like, really the only time you fail, or like you only learn when you fail.
Mhm.
If you succeed, you didn't actually learn what doesn't work. You just succeeded. Like, that's kind of hollow. So we love to fail. Our favorite expression is fail fast, fail cheap, and something else.
Our expression, and you don't know it?
Yeah. But yeah, no, we yeah. So failure is like really, really important for us. It's a key. So yeah.
Yeah, I think just start and just do it, and then surround yourself with people that are equally either stubborn, dumb, rule breakers, whatever, and yeah, there's enough of those people out in the world for sure.
So, do you guys think if you would have started before, do you guys think like doing the job wasted your time, or did it help you guys understand what not to do or what to do? Like, all of us think like before starting our journey, like even I would suggest my wife who has her own business right now that get an experience from somewhere and then do it. Like, make connections and like have a background and then start your own thing.
Yeah.
Does it make sense, or it's
Yeah.
fine. You just start it yourself and grow.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think two reasons for that. I want to thank all my employers for funding Oilstainlab. There's no way, the money involved to create something like this, that you could do this without a day job, without, even like freelance stuff like that. It's not going to cover it. You need the stability, the long-term kind of financial position to be able to do this. So we're obviously fortunate enough to be in that position, to be able to spend the money to develop the project. But also it's like 100%. Talk to a lot of young designers. They think, oh, I'm just going to start my own design consultancy straight out of school or whatever. And like, I understand like the passion and like the drive to get there, but it's also, you have to understand, you don't know anything at a design school. You don't know how the real world works. You don't know how design works. You don't know how it's all integrated with engineering, budgets, financials, marketing, all of this stuff, right? And so the most important thing is actually to go to these big companies and just learn as much as you can. And like, you don't necessarily have to learn about design. You just learn about every other facet, the resources that you have there, from the machinery, the engineering, the marketing, the photographers, everything you have access to is insane. The budgets are insane. It's such a privilege to work for those companies, and to be able to like control that and to like meld it to a direction it's so cool. But it's also a corporation. And that's why I don't like it. But I would kill to have those resources, obviously, as a small brand. But it's also, impossible. So learn as much as you can, have the stability financially, and then the dream is can be a side gig for a little bit, for sure.
100% agree.
Awesome. So I guess we can move on to the questions from chat.
Cool.
The first question is like, what are the services you guys provide, and how those services have evolved?
Yeah, so originally Oilstainlab started as a bit of an art design consultancy thing. It's evolved dramatically over the last, 5-6 years that it's been in business. At this point, it's probably a lot less on the freelance side. So basically, I really only work with like a few clients that I have a big relationship with, long-term relationship with. And yeah, so it's no longer what it started as, which was a design consultancy. At the start, it was basically everything from branding, sketching, anything from a concept to a finished product.
It was very shallow on the product side, right? It was.
What do you mean?
Like it didn't go to like company arcs or branding or like
bigger.
It was like smaller projects, very focused on like what the customer's current problem is, right? What their problem of the week is, which is like, oh, this product looks ugly. And then as the company's grown, it's taken on projects that are more like, let's tackle a project over a year. Let's tackle a project like, let's build the brand. Let's evolve the story to a bigger arc, so to speak. So
yeah, I think when you start off, it's very difficult to convince people that you know what you're doing, right? Even with our experience and everything, you're still not going to be entrusted with, a year-long project for an OEM. Like that just won't happen. You're going to have to build up the trust and the relationships and everything. And that's also probably why you should keep your day job while you're developing those networks and everything. But yeah, initially a lot of it was sort of, like he said, I guess shallow, or, a company would come to us and they're like, we need a video in 10 days. It's just like, what? You need a video? Like, why'd you come to us for a video? So we would make a video, right? And, yeah, so it was projects like that, and then we'd occasionally build some old cars for people, you know, like a resto mod thing, either for a fashion company like Ether or for a client or whatever. But those really, honestly, those don't make any money at all. That's just relaxation and like fun, and it's good for the brand to like create those products, but they make zero money.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess that answers the next question. If you build custom design for vintage cars, um, then someone asked, how did the Porsche purists react to this?
um yeah, it's interesting. So we've actually got a letter from Porsche, because as most people know, like Porsche is they defend their trademarks and their patents. So they've sued Singer and Gunther Works and all these guys. So we asked for clarification, and Porsche officially wants us to call it a 911. So in their letter, it says that the half 11 is not, we're not allowed to call it the half 11. It needs to be called Porsche 911 reimagined by Oilstainlab, for example. So obviously we're not selling anything. We're not selling the car, so it doesn't really matter. We can call it whatever we want. But as far as the purists, genuinely thought there would be more negativity around it. The only negativity is around the engine. It's got a Chevy motor in it, right? This big V8. I would have loved to put a Porsche engine in it. They're really expensive, number one. Number two, they make no power unless you turbo them, and we don't like turbos. And just the look of the car, it needed a very small engine. The Chevy LS engine is smaller than the 6-cylinder Porsche motor.
Smaller 928 motor, which is like 3 times the size.
Yeah, so it's smaller, it's lighter, it's like 3 times more powerful. So it's a no-brainer. Sounds awesome too. So yeah, but genuinely, I think people like know how much effort it is to build that. So I think no one will actually say anything mean to our face, you know, unless they're a real like ass. So we haven't had like any terrible interactions, I would say.
I think there's like 5% on the internet or whatever, you know, and they're always like, this is a fake car, it never existed. Like, why do you people like it? Blah blah blah. But generally, I think 95% online, and generally, people are nice, you know.
That's cool. Okay, we have a question from Art. What was the largest reality check for you guys during the whole half 11 execution stage?
Oh God. There was plenty of reality checks. I think one of the first ones was very, very early on, where we were working with a shop to build the chassis, and I was checking in on them like daily. You know, I'd drive from work and like check up on what they did, and they basically did nothing for like 2 months, right? And then they slapped a giant bill on it, and basically said, you need to pay this, or, you know, we're not going to continue working on it. And I was like, no, like, you guys didn't do anything. Like, I work with fabrication people at work. Like, I've built concept car frames and stuff. Like, what are you talking about? And basically, situation didn't go well. They basically had the car in their shop, so they wouldn't give it back to us. We kind of, you know, we did not have money at the time anyway, but it was a lot of money they wanted. Huh? No. But basically, you know, police nearly got involved, and then eventually we came to an agreement. They released the car. Not going to name them, but yeah, that was a big one, because we basically like blew a ton of money really quickly and had nothing to show for it. And it was just like, oh man, this, like, finding really good people to work with is actually really difficult. So that was the first one. I think the next one was probably what? Where's another one? Is it getting the thing running, or?
What would you say this is the second one? Well, I mean, there's not one individual one that sticks out in my head, but it's just like every week was something, right? Because you don't have any skills, basically. Like very candidly, it's like, you get to a certain stage and you're happy, and then you're like, oh, the next thing. And I'm like, I have no idea how to do this. So yeah, I mean, definitely the moment my brother is talking about stands out as like probably the only moment where it was like, should we even do this? Like, this is like, should we just quit now? Because like it's just started and we're already getting screwed.
Mhm.
And
We don't have the skills to actually do this, so
Yeah.
we're going to rely on people.
Yeah.
Or we have to learn these skills ourselves. And it's like, that's when you see how daunting the challenge is.
yeah.
Yeah, I made that question just to like show which for me is the highest, like the most the highest quality you guys have, which is resilience, right? You guys are very resilient to everything. Like like staying at GM after everything that happened for them many times. I couldn't stand. I left in a year and a half. That was enough for me. But I salute you guys to keep pushing it and always like fighting the good fight. Yeah, I think it's an important question, at least for me to show that quality from you guys.
Yes. The easiest thing to do always is to give up, right? So
Yeah.
It's also the smart thing sometimes.
sometimes it's smart.
Yeah, and next is, how did you guys finance this journey, like from LA to New York? And how important do you think it is for creatives to have the business knowledge? How does it work?
Wow. So I'll start with, so financing the trip from LA to New York was our first time going and getting sponsorship. Because everything up until that point, we did ourselves. But then this was like going to be a big production. There's like a YouTube video, there's all this stuff. So we thought, okay, let's try and find other people's money. Like, let's try this. And so we ended up, forming a partnership with Mobile One. So Mobile One contributed a significant amount, which basically paid for our media crew, their hotels, their food, the gas, everything basically. So I don't think we made any money, but we didn't lose any money, let's say, which is a huge success because it's like, a dream trip. So that's how that trip was funded and paid for. And then in terms of business for designers, I think most designers, myself included, when they're younger or coming out of school, are vastly underprepared. Actually terrifyingly underprepared. I think my brother and I even more so because we were so young. I didn't know what a credit card was when I graduated, right? And went to try and get a cell phone. And they're like, oh, you don't have a credit score here in the US. And I was like, oh, so I can't have a cell phone? They're like, no, you can't have a cell phone. I was like, oh, well, how do you get a credit score? So our parents really didn't prepare us for that at all. They took care of us, but also because of that, we were never in the deep end of the pool, right? So then we got thrown in there and we had to swim. So we had to figure that out and lots of research. But yeah, I would try and take as many business classes as you can. I would talk to as many entrepreneurs as you can. I would get mentors. I would study history. History has a way of repeating itself. So that's really, really important. Learn what succeeded, learn what's failed. Even if you don't understand business, if you can recognize patterns of success and failure, that's really important. And understand that, like, when you're making a product, you can make the coolest product, the best product, the product that will save the world in your bedroom. And if no one knows about it and no one can buy it and you have no reach and you have no manufacturing, then it may as well not exist, right? And that is business, basically. It's like selling stuff, getting it to people. So building something, having an idea and building it is not enough. It really isn't. And that's been a very big awakening, I think, in general, as we've matured from creatives and designers into more on the business side and sort of being very and then there's the whole other facet of like, going to get funding and venture capital and all that stuff, which, I don't necessarily have as much experience with, but I would say anyone who's wanting to start their own business, it's easier with other people's money. So if you can convince rich people to give you money, do it.
All right. So last question is for Iliya. Like, you also teach in art center, so you get a lot of exposure to what's going on in the in like, we know that we regard art center as one of the biggest, most important, nice institutes. So I'm sure the students over here would like to know what is required in a portfolio, the first thing that makes you attractive for these brands like Canoe or any other OEM they want to get into.
At least there's Mile. I can tell that.
Yeah, I mean, the art's hiring, right?
Yeah, you're hiring.
No, not right now. Unfortunately, we're trying, but not right now.
Yeah, so I think, look, I think with design schools, heroes, anything like that, stay always very level keeled, very level headed about how you perceive those things, right? Because sometimes you meet your heroes and you're just like, maybe they're not my hero anymore, right? I think schools go through flows. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're not so hot. But I think generally speaking, every school caters very specifically to the regional design studios, right? Mm-hmm. So Art Center is built to basically push students into the California studios, right? CCS, Detroit, IED, Italy, France, Coventry, whatever, right? And so I think the particular skills of each of those schools are unique and different. But I think overall, like at the end of the day, when you look at portfolios, the ones that are the strongest is generally just what I would say is like the ability to tell unique stories, right? You go to Art Center and you see it all the time. Some guy will create like an SUV for like a young couple that like lives in the city and like goes out to the countryside or whatever. And it's like, yeah, it could be anything. Like, who cares, right? And if your project's like that, it's generally going to be very subjective. Like, either I like the surfacing or I don't, It's nothing particularly unique. So I think tackling unique problems, thinking about the world in unique ways, making connections of things that are outside of automotive to automotive in really unique and interesting ways. I think it's about creating projects with personality, so to speak. Obviously, that said, this is assuming that the skills are very high, right? In terms of visual communication, whether it's sketching, rendering, which sadly is becoming very, very difficult to find people that can sketch and draw well. Because I think when me and him went to Art Center and stuff, and I looked at like the old guys, I was like, damn, these guys could draw, like gouache, watercolor, whatever, like ad markers, like crazy what they could do, and then obviously our generation has kind of lost some of those skills. And then I think, going into the future, it seems like a lot more kind of quick speed modeling, whether it's Blender, whatever, any of these new softwares that CG is super popular. And then obviously AI is growing ever more impressive. So I think the difficulty there is how do you stand out, right? And that again goes back to the critical thinking side, the the intellectual storytelling. That's what's going to make you unique, interesting, and stand out just because of the personality of the projects and yourself. So
Yeah.
it's a very difficult question to answer, but
I think it's well answered, because nowadays, like, anyone can do pretty sketches, anyone can do awesome modeling, realistic renders, but what sells is the unique story, or what is the unique concept behind that.
Yep.
So,
Yeah, I mean, I'll add one sentence basically. It's like whenever you're presenting work or creating work, always just ask yourself, why should anyone care? That's it. And if you have an answer of why someone should care when you show them a sketch or a rendering, then that's it. You probably have a reason. You'll probably be able to connect better.
That's awesome, guys. Thank you so much for this session. And if anyone wants to give any closing remarks to these guys, or anything you guys want to share.
Hey guys, finally nice to meet you guys on a video call, because we have been always seeing your content online and also on Unfiltered a lot, and it's nice to see you guys actually speaking about the story and the part, and also nice presentation. For me, the story was a bit more other way around. Like, I could connect very well because 10 years back I was the other way around. I started from engineering and now I'm in design. And somehow coincidentally I also feel that I built a car like 10 years before, which was half car and a half motorcycle.
Nice.
And it was like so interesting because the front part of the car is like a car with two wheels and the back part is a motorcycle with one wheel. So I built a rear like a trike.
nice.
And so my question to you guys was like, because I understand how in the prototyping or this kind of area where you're building with non-OEM stuff, it's a bit more messy, unorganized, unfinished, which has its own charm. But since you were working on both, like, like, for example, now he's working in Canoe and also comes back to Oilstainlab, it's a different atmosphere. So how do you get, like, doesn't it bother you, like, okay, wish I had all this technology or the things that you get in OEM, but here it's more rustic. So how do you cope up with, you have the skills, the softwares, you can do it, but it's only the restrictions of tools and the money. So how do you live with this?
Great question. Yeah, it's a dichotomy, right? I think it's
There's to put your ego away.
Yeah, you put the designer ego away. I think that's really difficult at times. There's moments where, like, I don't want to take the car to this event because it's not like perfect, and it's like, screw it, who cares? Like, no one else has built anything. Like, just take it. What's the worst that happens? You have interesting conversations either way, right? So I think it's taking the ego away, but it's also like, it's very liberating then to just build things and to keep moving. And the thing is like, at an OEM or Canoe or wherever, the resource, again, it's incredible, right? You just put a tape line down and, like, guys are over there like sanding, right? And you're just like, this is crazy, right? It's such a wild thing, but it's also, it needs to be perfect, right? The stress level, the time commitment, everything, like, you're not supposed to make mistakes, right? You can't really fail because, if you put a tape line down and it's wrong, and then the guy spends half a day sanding to it, it's like, you just really screwed the company, right? So it's actually, it's kind of liberating to not make perfect things when you make perfect things for your day job. So I think it's that it's a little bit of an escape and a little bit of, yeah, it's an ever evolving work in progress prototype. So I think I tell myself before I go to sleep, like, oh, it'll get better tomorrow, so don't worry about it, and just keep moving. So
Yeah, I mean, I think to build on that, I think what makes that project so cool, and it is anchored in kind of the 60s and 70s, right? And if you've seen those race cars, they are utter crap. Like, I think my welds are bad, then I look at a 917 and the welds on a 917.
Don't the Italians are worse. The Italians are worse.
Or like even a modern day Ferrari, and you look at the welds on that, you're like, whoa, that's bad. But it's funny because the fancier the event, like when we go to Monterey Car Week with our car, and these guys all have Paganis, Koenigsegg's, Bugattis, and they see that thing with all its dents, and like you called it rustic, they love that. They're so amazed by it because their life is so perfect, right? They're billionaires, like they have everything they want. And so I think part of the charm is that, and like embracing that imperfection is it. There are times when it's embarrassing. Yes, there are times when it's embarrassing to be like, yeah, look what we built. But yeah, it's still, yeah, it's. Yeah.
But it's also like a growth path. So I think Oilstainlab, as we continue to grow, we've gotten more resources, we've gotten more better financial position. We've done a lot of these things, and so I think each project going forward, I think, yeah, it should get better and better. And you know, I don't think we'll ever have OEM resources, but you know, we'll try and up our quality level to where we're actually like, yeah, somewhat happy with it.
Have you seen what Koenigsegg is posting right now? Because they're celebrating their anniversary. So on Instagram, they're posting like the pictures of their very first car
30 years ago.
Check it out.
Okay, we'll have a look.
It makes me feel
Also
better.
good to see the first prototypes are always these kind of things. Like I also see, like, because you know, sometimes when you're building the realistic stuff, because when you work in an OEM, you just say I need it like this. There are a couple of people who will see how it's supposed to be done. But when you're actually doing it yourself, there is this part of thinking, okay, maybe should I 3D print, or maybe is there a way I fake it so that it at least looks like it, but internally it's full crap of shit inside it. So this part is also is nice and interesting. So in vice versa, it also helps me in the industry also, because you know, it's your way to see your part of the job, that okay, it's supposed to look like this, but I don't care how it's going to be inside or who is going to see how it's going to be done. There are people for it. So, but in your case, that's the realistic part and difficulty, that maybe most of the people wouldn't understand why it's like this.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm also like a big fan, and hope one day I could get your scale model. At least that's what I can collect.
Nice. Like working on it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Manav, you want to ask something?
Yeah. I'd like to thank you all so much for this opportunity. This is amazing. My question, it's not really a question, but so much of your experience. How much of the investment that you require, financially, mentally, to sort of start a business like this? Because I'm very interested. And anything coming from you guys, which started another known from. How big of an investment you can make it, and also financially, but did you require to start Oilstainlab?
He's really quiet. Can someone summarize if they heard it?
Manav, your audio seems very pressed somehow. It's hard to hear.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. So my question was that how big of an investment did you require, financially, mentally, physically, to start Oilstainlabs? Because I'm very interested in starting a business, and I would love to learn something from you guys, because you all have learned from it. You all have had your own struggles, and it'd be really insightful to know that.
Yeah, so I mean, Oilstainlab was fully self-funded, so we didn't get any investment or anything. We basically based it off whatever we're making on the freelance side. We invest into the company, into the half 11. Of course, having said that, if I was starting this from scratch, I might go and get investors, because obviously that can speed things up, but also it adds a lot of pressure. And also it it forces you to make something that is commercially successful, or at least to attempt it. So, that's kind of the risk reward of it.
Yeah, I think the way Oilstainlab started was it was an escape from our corporate lives, right? So we didn't give up our day jobs. We just started it. So like mentally, like we were prepared to like not make any money, right? Like financially, we were prepared not to make any money. It was this escape thing, right? And then you just go out, you get a couple jobs here and there, you start making some money, and it just starts to organically grow. There wasn't an inherent pressure that it needed to be a success overnight or anything like that. So I think it was a very pressure-free zone, and it allowed us to also take on projects that represent the brand as much, because maybe they're not as lucrative, but the image of it is great for the brand, right? So yeah, it goes back to like the financial stability that we did have with our day jobs, essentially. I think that answers.
Okay. I just have a small follow-up question for that. Thank you for that. In hindsight, would you have done anything differently regarding the business side of things, or regarding the regarding your journey, basically? Would you have done something differently?
I think internally both him and me agree that we wouldn't do anything differently. That's just our philosophy. But yes, if there's any regret, it's always not doing something sooner, right? So that I don't think I would have changed the way it started, but maybe sooner it could have been pushed into a different direction where, you rely less on your day job or whatever. I would say Oilstainlab was very risk averse. There was zero risk. And maybe because of that, it grew slower than if my back was against the wall and I needed to do it to survive, basically. But again, I wouldn't change anything, but I would say if anything, it's just the regret is, not pushing harder sooner.
Yeah, I think from a business point of view, it was again very much like we didn't really care if it made money or not. So I think knowing now the things that we know, it's like with hindsight, it's like could have done a bunch more stuff to structure the company in better ways, and financially everything, like just a completely different way of doing it. It's just like even where you incorporate the company, right? Like we're incorporated in California, and it's like that was stupid. Like it should have been in a different state, but you don't know what you don't know at the time, so you just be as curious as you can and learn as quickly as you can, and try and put yourself on the right path afterwards, I guess. But yeah, I had no regrets. I think we've had a pretty good run here. So
Awesome. So,
Rishabh,
go ahead.
I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Thank you so much for that. It's been great talking to you all and learning from you all. Rishabh, I have a senior from my college with me who's sitting with me. He'd like to just ask one question, if he can.
Sure. Go ahead.
Okay. Over to you, Aditya.
Hi guys, thank you for this very insightful talk. It has been really amazing to look at your journey, and that small key that you made was very interesting, because we all have that image in our Pinterest boards, and like, okay, it is in almost all our projects. Like, where do you draw inspiration from? So that was a really cool thing to see. Coming to the question and building on the point that you mentioned, that to stay curious. With staying curious, you also have to stay open to new experiences, stay open-minded while working, or even we have to keep that sense of awe alive in everything we do. So how do you guys go about it? Because as designers, sometimes we get too we get into a narrow lane, somewhat like a horse with those flaps on their eyes, like, oh, and then we forget that it's a wide journey or it's not a linear process. How do you guys tackle this issue?
So the question is, how do we retain curiosity or retain sense of awe?
Yes, the curiosity, sense of awe. How do you stay open-minded, and how
Okay.
do you let those new experiences go through you and not get rigid in the process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, one thing with Oilstainlab over the last like 2 years is literally we have no idea what'll happen in like next week. That curiosity is just like how I wake up every morning. Generally speaking, I think I like learning is very important. I try to probably spend like an hour to maybe 2 hours every day, like learning about new things, new technologies that are happening across the world, right? So politics, legislation, technology, innovations, inventions, whatever, financial stuff, like what's happening in the markets, who's doing what. And I think design, you have to be like, you have to scoop everything that's happening around the world and then kind of collect it, filter it, and then make like an analysis and a prediction, right? In general. So no one can predict the future, but we can certainly take in and recognize, again, patterns and stuff. So to me, learning is like super, super important. If there's any regret, is that I'm too busy to like learn as much as I want to. Like I have all these books I want to read. I have all these softwares I want to learn. I have all this stuff I want to do, and I just don't have any time to do it. So that's the one thing I really wish I did. In terms of sense of awe, I think as an experienced designer, it's really easy to get jaded. It's very easy to like look at this new Ferrari, like that's crap. So it for me, it's definitely a very subconscious or like a very conscious thing where I have to tell myself like, it's still cool. Like, yes, you could do better, but it's still cool, and like the average people, it's still cool. So yeah, being a designer, it's difficult, man. It's a blessing and a curse, right? We are blessed to see like true beauty and innovation and everything, but it's also a curse because we see products for what they are, which is sometimes shallow marketing, shallow design. Yeah, hopefully that answers it.
Yeah, I think stay curious. What it means is just, look throughout like your life, right? Whatever. Every one of us can kind of analyze it, right? And there's patterns that happen, right? Like if we go to work, we generally drive the exact same road, every single day. But like, why is that? Why not take an extra 5 minutes and like go a different way? Like maybe you'll learn that there's some cool little restaurant or a little store, or some guy has a classic car and then like one day you talk to them or something, right? It can be the type of music you listen to. For me, like I always change depending on what project I'm working on. I'll change the music. It's just I listen to everything and everything, right? And there's no judgment. It's the food you eat. It's literally everything. Like look for patterns, look for ways to break it. That's one way to just expose yourself to new stuff, right? Obviously learning, huge fan of that. I think me and him, we're just obsessed with learning. I think we talked a little bit earlier about challenges and overcoming things, and I think that's our love. But it's also like, yeah, any topic under the sun, just try and educate yourself. You never know how it's going to be interconnected to future projects. Like, again, if you walk into a room or like a bar or something and like you sit down and some guy starts talking about like astrophysics or whatever, right? And you're like, well, I read this one article, and you just blurt that out and you've now started a conversation, right? You have no idea where it's going to go. But you've opened that door and you never know what's kind of behind it. So yeah, just being as well-rounded, educated, cultured, open to those experiences, I think that's curiosity, and just live it.
Awesome. All right.
Hi guys.
We
Yeah,
have last
yeah.
guy. Before we wrap.
Thank you so much for the journey that you shared with us. It's really inspiring. We've been following you, and now we get deeper insight into it. So thank you so much. I'm Pranav Bhandari, and I'm from India. So my question is, since you guys were really heavily involved in the fabrication of the vehicle, and you were so hands-on with all the materials involved in making this car into a real project, when you go back to the drawing board, when you start sketching again for a new project, what kind of sensitivity do you feel that you've gained through doing the half 11 and through doing even more of the resto mod projects and doing actual physical fabrication work? When you get back to the sketching board, what are some things that you've learned that you now do differently uh, in your sketching phase when you start?
Great question. I think it's again a little bit difficult because I'm still in the polar opposites, right? I have Oilstainlab and like the rustic build, and then I have Canoe, where we have pretty advanced manufacturing and fabrication techniques and people. But I think, I mean, the one thing you can say is like functional design, there's an honesty and a beauty to some of that stuff, right? And so when you build it and you see like what good welds look like and stuff like that, all of a sudden you're like, why am I hiding this behind like a piece of plastic? So I think it changes your philosophy on things. It changes your outlook on things. There's definitely been some projects where I've discussed some engineering stuff, and let's just say the engineers didn't really listen to me, but they should have on maybe material choice and stuff like that. But it's, I don't know. I mean, it's just you become more useful as a team member. For me, example at Canoe or whatever, right? Just with the knowledge that you have, and then with Oilstainlab stuff. I think it's just an ever evolving process of a designer, right? The more educated you are, the more you're likely to sit down and have a clearer picture of the finished product in your head. And so you can then go through sections faster, you can iterate faster, get to that final solution without like 20 pages of sketches and like kind of like wrong roads, right? So I think it just makes you more efficient, so to speak.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, I would just say after half 11, my design philosophy has changed to be a lot simpler. Just because when you're metal shaping the metal and you're on the English wheel and you roll it on the English wheel, seeing the metal and the beautiful reflection, and you just slightly add a little crown, you add a little more crown, just seeing that, it's so nice. And you wonder, why do we need these complicated forms on cars? Like, why do we need that? And
Plastic can make it happen.
yeah. And granted, I am no longer a car designer. Basically, I'm, I do Oilstainlab basically full time. So, yeah, I don't work for the OEMs, but I really question shapes now that we see on the roads, let's say.
The more you
Perfect.
know. All right, guys. Thank you, both of you, for making out your time for this. And I'm sure it has been an inspiring 1.5, 2 hours for all 51, 60 of us. And yeah, all the best for wherever you guys are headed. And you have a massive following from India, and everyone loves what you're doing. And yeah, just keep going. everyone. Guys.
Thanks for having us. Thanks for giving us a chance to chat, and yeah, good luck with everything you guys are doing and where you're going, and yeah, we'll be watching.
Yeah.
Yeah.